Hello, everybody. This is Jim Ransom. I'm back again. I hope you will welcome me back after what I prefer to call a prolonged summer vacation. I apologize, but I did have a few medical problems that had to be dealt with, and perhaps some of my vacation days were simple procrastination. Sorry. But I'm back now, and here are some poems that caught my attention and which I hope you will also like. I'm going to start off with a prologue, which seems appropriate when we're just starting a new series. Prologue, incidentally, is from this book I wrote several years ago called Immortal Prairie. I might as well tell you right up front, this program will immerse you in poetry. I hope no one takes this as an affront or a challenge to their sense of propriety. It's fair to say many would never choose to buy a poem even priced at a dime, or spend a penny, as the saying goes, to buy a book of verse at any time. So I'll be the first to forgive you if you want to order up another drink, or have a sudden urge to use the loo, or maybe just don't want to think in scans, pentameters, or iambics odd, which is clearly justified after all if you've just feasted on beef or cod, and would rather send a text or get a call. But dare I ask you for a morsel of attention as we enter a land of versified invention. The first poem that we're going to read is by Joy Harjo, and Joy Harjo likes to be identified as an American Indian poet, and she has served as the United States Poet Laureate a few years ago. We're going to start off with one of her poems that I think says a lot of good things about where I'd like us to go and where I'd like us to be. This is called Singing Everything. Once there were songs for everything. Songs for planting, for growing, for harvesting, for eating, getting drunk, falling asleep, for sunrise, birth, mind break, and war, for death. Those are the heaviest songs, and they have to be pried from the earth with shovels of grief. Now all we hear are falling in love songs and falling apart after falling in love songs. The earth is leaning sideways, and a song is emerging from the floods and fires. Urgent tendrils lift toward the sun. You must be friends with silence to hear. The songs of the guardians of silence are the most powerful. They are the most rare. She's written another poem I want to follow up with, and it's called A Refuge in the Smallest of Places. And the preface to it is a dedication for Emily Dickinson, one of the singers, and for all who, those fleeing on those ancient migration trails north, are heading home. Someone sang for me, and no one else could hear it, when I had given up and made knife marks on my arm, or drank and gave myself away, or was given. Someone sang for me, and no one else could hear it, when demons came with rope and cages to take my children from me and imprison us. Someone sang for me, and no one else could hear it. Now I am here in the timeless room of lost poetry, gathering up the destroyed and forgotten because of the songs someone sang that no one else could hear but me. Joy Harjo, An American Sunrise. I would encourage you to buy that book. It was a national bestseller, and I think there are a lot of poems in there that are worth reading. And remember, she comes from a background in which she's not entirely happy with the way her people, that is the Indian population, was left, she sees it somewhat bereft in the world of America today. Now let's have some poems by a happier poet. And as you all know, I'm a big fan of Billy Collins, and this book is called Aimless Love. Billy can write thick books of poetry. I mean, he's just constantly writing poems as far as I can tell. And the quality has remained very high in his poetry. And the first poem I want to read is called The Country. I wondered about you when you told me never to leave a box of wooden strike anywhere matches lying around the house because the mice might get into them and start a fire. But your face was absolutely straight when you twisted the lid down on the round tin where the matches you said are always stowed. Well, who could sleep that night? Who could whisk away the thought of the one unlikely mouse padding along a cold water pipe behind the floral wallpaper, gripping a single wooden match between the needles of his teeth? Who would not see him rounding a corner, the blue tip scratching against the rough-hewn beam, the sudden flare, and the creature for one bright, shining moment, suddenly thrust ahead of his time. Now a fire starter, now a torchbearer, and a forgotten ritual, little brown druid illuminating some ancient night. Who could fail to notice, lit up in the blazing insulation, the tiny looks of wonderment on the faces of his fellow mice, one-time inhabitants of what once was your house in the country? This is one of those poems that's full of irony, and it takes you places that you really don't expect in the beginning to ever have to go. And I love Billy Collins just for that fact. And now, here's another one from Billy. It's called Drawing You from Memory. Drawing You from Memory. I seem to have forgotten several features crucial to the doing of this. For instance, how your lower lip meets your upper lip, besides just being below it, and what happens at the end of the nose. How much does it shade the plane of your cheek? And would even a bit of nostril be visible from this angle? Chinese eyes, you call them, which could be the difficulty I have in showing the flash of light in your iris and being so far away from you for so long. I cannot remember what direction it flows, the deep river of your hair. But all of this will come together the minute I see you again at the station. My notebook and pens packed away, your face smiling as I cup it in my hands, or frowning later when we are at home and you are berating me in the kitchen, waving the pages in my face, demanding to know the name of this latest little whore. Oh, 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 my. Billy, I don't know how you ever got away with that. But let's move on. Let's not spend too much time contemplating this poem, that poem. You notice, though, in his poems, they always end with a surprise. And that is often the secret of really good poetry, especially modern poetry, where the poem and the poet do not want to give away too much early on. They want you to wait until the end to find out how it really comes out. Now, this next poem is a satire. You'll see that, I think, as we get into it. It's called Irish Poetry. That morning, under a pale hood of sky, I heard the unambiguous scrape of spackling against the side of our wickered penitential house. The day murled and clabbered in the thick, stony light, and the rooks, feathered, gnarling, astounded the salt waves, the plush arm of coast. I carried my bucket past the forked coercion of a tree, up toward the pious and neck-to-teating preeminence of a school, hunkered there in its gully of learning. But only later, as I stood before a washstand, and gaunt, phosphorescent heifers swam purposefully beyond these windows, did the whorled and sparky gib of the indefinite manage to whirl me into knowledge. Then I heard the ghost clink of milk bottle on the rough threshold, and understood the meadow bells that trembled over a nimbus of ragwort, the whole afternoon lambent, corrugated, puddle mad. So what's the message of that poem? Well, it doesn't have any message except it tries to recreate some of the words and some of the mood that Irish poets tend to take us along with them when they write a poem and we read it, and at the end kind of wonder, what was that all about? Okay. So that is it for today. And for the several people who berated me, maybe that is not the right word, who expressed disappointment, or maybe it was disapproval of my disappearance, or maybe it was just sort of a muted happiness about it all. I don't know. Just as the summer was starting, for my decision, which I failed to share with my audience, to vacate the arena and make daily trips to my favorite coffee shop with family and a particularly close friend, I beg your forgiveness. And saddest of all, I stopped reading and loving poems such as the ones I picked for you today. I won't do it again unless I'm in the throes of a fatal illness, which God forgive me for saying it. Listen in again next week. We'll see what happens. Bye now.